They were meant to love them. They were meant to protect them. But instead, they took their lives. In a world where the bond between parent and child is considered sacred, these cases left the world horrified. The idea that a mother or father, the very people who bring life into this world, could end that life with their own hands shatters every instinct of human nature. These aren't just stories of murder. They are stories of betrayal, heartbreak, and justice. Across courtrooms in America and beyond, judges, jurors, and the public have watched in disbelief as parents stood trial for the unthinkable. Some cried, some begged for forgiveness, others didn't flinch at all. But when that final gavel drops, when the sentence is read aloud, their reactions reveal everything: the weight of their actions, the finality of justice, the cold echo of life without parole. In this episode, we're diving deep into the darkest corners of the human psyche. These are not just true crime stories. These are moments when the courtroom fell silent, when even the toughest prosecutors held back tears, and when entire nations asked the same question: how could a parent do this? We'll walk you through the haunting details of each case, the lives that were lost, the investigations that followed, and most importantly, the final moments in court when justice was served. From cold, remorseless expressions to emotional breakdowns that shook the courtroom walls, each case shows a different side of guilt, grief, and punishment. These are stories that have haunted headlines, names that are etched in public memory, not for greatness, but for the horror they unleashed on their own children. And whether it was jealousy, mental illness, revenge, or pure evil, the reasons never justify the crime. One mother smothered her child in the middle of the night and showed no regret. Another father took his son's life in a twisted attempt to save him from the world. A couple killed their daughter and blamed each other in court, turning on one another to avoid the life sentence that was coming. And through it all, cameras captured the moments their fates were sealed. In this video, you will hear the raw courtroom audio. You will see their faces at the very moment they realize there's no going back, no parole, no appeal, just a lifetime behind bars with only their guilt for company. But before we begin, a warning. This episode contains real cases of filicide, the murder of one's own child, and may be disturbing for some viewers. We approach these stories with deep respect for the victims and a commitment to telling the truth without sensationalism. Because the truth is horrifying enough, this isn't fiction. These aren't movie villains. These are real parents, real families, and real consequences. Her name was Melissa Grant. Her daughter's name was Emily. Emily was just 6 years old, full of life, laughter, and innocence. But on a cold November morning in Michigan, the silence of the Grant household was broken, not by cartoons or school preparation, but by a 911 call that would leave even the most seasoned dispatcher shaken. "I found my daughter in her bed. She's not breathing," Melissa calmly told the operator. When first responders arrived, they were met with a scene that didn't add up. Emily's body was cold, but not in a way that suggested a natural death. There were bruises, faint but visible. Her lips were slightly blue, and her bedroom, eerily tidy, almost staged. As investigators dug deeper, the chilling truth began to emerge. Melissa, a single mother in her early 30s, had recently lost her job. She was behind on rent. The father was out of the picture, and family support was minimal. But despite all of that, friends said she never appeared violent, just distant. What the autopsy revealed was devastating. Emily had been smothered, suffocated during the night with a pillow. No signs of struggle, no screaming. It was calculated, silent, and deliberate, the kind of murder that takes time and intent. When police confronted Melissa with the evidence, her response stunned even the detectives. "I just wanted it to stop," she said. "What to stop?" they asked. She stared blankly. "Everything." She was arrested on the spot for first-degree murder. The trial took 6 months, during which Melissa showed little emotion, no crying, no breakdowns. She barely even looked at the photos of her daughter that the prosecution displayed in court. The prosecution painted her as cold, detached, and disturbingly calm about what she had done. The defense tried to argue mental illness, claiming postpartum depression and psychological instability. But multiple evaluations found her competent, damaged maybe, but aware of her actions. The most heartbreaking moment came when Emily's teacher took the stand. She described Emily as sweet but quiet, a child who always looked tired but never complained. The courtroom fell silent when she ended her testimony with, "She once told me she didn't like sleeping at home. I asked why, and she said, 'Because Mommy watches me too long.'" On the day of sentencing, the judge didn't hold back. "You were given the gift of motherhood, and you turned it into a death sentence for your own child. There are no words strong enough to describe the evil in what you did." And then came the sentence: life in prison without the possibility of parole. The courtroom waited for a reaction. Some expected a scream, a breakdown, maybe even a tear, but Melissa simply nodded. No visible emotion, no apology, no words. She was escorted out of the courtroom with the same calm expression she had worn throughout the trial, as if it didn't matter, as if nothing did. Reporters outside the courthouse later described her as robotic and detached from reality. Even the guards who walked her back to her holding cell said she never once asked about what would happen next. No questions, no fear, just silence. Emily's grandparents, who sat through every day of the trial, issued a short statement to the press. "We lost Emily twice, once when she died, and again when we realized her own mother was capable of this." This case became one of the most haunting in recent Michigan history, not because of how brutal it was, but because of how emotionless it was. A mother who killed and didn't seem to care, and that's what made it unforgettable. His name was David Morales, a former construction worker known in his neighborhood in San Antonio, Texas, as a quiet, hard-working father of two. He wasn't rich, he wasn't famous, but people called him dependable, a man who kept to himself, focused on his family, and stayed out of trouble. But behind closed doors, David was falling apart. After losing his job during an economic downturn, David spiraled into depression. Bills piled up. His marriage collapsed. His wife took their oldest daughter and moved in with her sister, leaving David with full custody of their 4-year-old son, Lucas. The boy was David's entire world, but even that love wasn't enough to save them. In June 2022, David drove his pickup truck into a rural wooded area outside the city, parked near a clearing, and sat in silence for nearly an hour. Then, in a decision that would horrify the nation, he suffocated his son with a blanket, then tried to take his own life with a knife to the wrist. But he failed. A hunter found the truck the next morning. Inside was a scene that would traumatize even seasoned investigators. Lucas's small body lay in the back seat, still buckled into his car seat. David was in the driver's seat, bleeding, but alive. When police interviewed him in the hospital, David confessed everything. "I didn't want him to suffer. I thought I was doing him a favor," he said through tears. "I didn't see a way out. I thought it would be better if we both left this world together." The public reaction was swift and torn. Some saw him as a monster, others as a mentally broken man who needed help, not prison. But the law was clear. A child's life had been taken, intentionally, and someone had to be held accountable. During the trial, David pleaded guilty to first-degree murder. The courtroom was packed, many in attendance there, not just to see justice, but to try to understand why. The prosecution didn't deny David's mental state. They emphasized it. But they also stressed that Lucas had no choice. He was a child who trusted his father, a child who couldn't run, couldn't fight, couldn't scream. He looked into the eyes of the man who was supposed to protect him. And that's the last thing he saw, the prosecutor said in a chilling statement. But it was sentencing day that everyone remembers. David stood, shaking, in an orange jumpsuit. His voice cracked as he tried to speak. "There's no excuse for what I did. I wake up every day and see his face. I hear him laugh in my dreams. And then I remember what I did. I will never forgive myself." Then, He collapsed, in front of the judge, in front of the cameras. He fell to his knees, sobbing uncontrollably. It wasn't performative. It was raw, real. Years of pain erupting in a single moment. Guards helped him up, but even the judge looked visibly shaken. The courtroom was silent as the judge gave her statement. Mr. Morales, your remorse is evident. Your pain is real. But the law cannot excuse the intentional killing of a child. Lucas deserved to grow up, to go to school, to live. And no matter how broken you were, you took that from him. David was sentenced to life in prison, with the possibility of parole after 40 years. Outside the courthouse, reactions were mixed. Some said it was a tragedy from all sides. Others said remorse didn't bring the child back. One sign held by a protester read, "A child's life is worth more than regret." David now spends his days in a Texas state prison. According to prison staff, he rarely speaks, keeps a picture of Lucas in his cell, and hasn't stopped crying since the day he was sentenced. This is the story of a father who loved his son but let his demons win. A story of guilt, grief. They were known as Amanda Reynolds and Chris Vaughn, a couple whose relationship was toxic, controlling, and destructive from the very beginning. Neighbors in their small Ohio town described them as troubled but passionate, a couple that would fight in public, scream in the driveway, and then post smiling family photos the next morning. Behind those fake smiles were lies, abuse, and a growing hatred neither of them could hide for long, not even from their 7-year-old daughter, Lily. Lily was quiet, withdrawn, and often missed school. Teachers suspected something was wrong. Bruises were occasionally noticed. Excuses were always given. "She fell off the couch," Amanda would say. "She's just clumsy," Chris would add. No one pushed hard enough until it was too late. In January 2021, Lily was found dead in her bedroom. The cause: internal injuries, bruises across her back, and signs of prolonged physical abuse. But the horror didn't stop there. The investigation revealed that this wasn't one moment of rage. This had been happening for months, maybe even longer. The police arrested both Amanda and Chris. The question wasn't who did it, but rather, who did more? That's when the real drama began. Amanda blamed Chris. "He beat her. He lost control," she told investigators, crying in the interview room. Chris blamed Amanda. "She hated that girl, said she ruined her life. I tried to stop her. 2 parents, 1 dead child, and no one taking responsibility." At trial, their love-hate relationship played out like a twisted drama. Secret recordings from inside the jail were played in court. In one, Amanda screamed at Chris, calling him a coward who let it happen. In another, Chris yelled back, "You were the one who wanted her gone." The prosecution used these recordings to paint a picture of a dysfunctional couple that enabled each other's cruelty, until it destroyed the one innocent life in their home. Text messages recovered from Amanda's phone included one that read, "If Lily wasn't here, we could finally be free." The jury was horrified. Witness after witness described a household full of anger, manipulation, and violence. A former babysitter testified that Lily once told her, "Mommy and Daddy say I ruin everything." When it came time for sentencing, the courtroom was on edge. Amanda and Chris were brought in separately. Neither looked at each other. The judge didn't hold back. "You two were meant to protect Lily. Instead, you turned your own home into a place of fear, pain, and death. And now, like cowards, you both stand here blaming each other instead of taking responsibility." Then came the sentence: Amanda Reynolds, life in prison without parole. Chris Vaughn, life in prison without parole. The courtroom erupted in gasps. Chris stood up and yelled, "This is her fault! She did it!" Amanda screamed back, "Liar!" "You know what you did." The bailiffs had to physically separate them. The judge banged the gavel, but the damage was done. The world had just witnessed a rare moment. 2 parents not only convicted of killing their own child, but turning on each other in a final desperate attempt to avoid the consequences. Outside the courthouse, signs read, "Justice for Lily. Rot in prison. both of you. The public wasn't split on this one. There was no sympathy, no confusion, just anger. Amanda and Chris now live in two separate prisons hundreds of miles apart. But no matter how far they're kept from each other, they share one unbreakable chain: the memory of the little girl they destroyed, and the life sentence they earned for it. This was the story of a manipulative couple who thought they could blame their way out of justice. But justice came anyway. These stories are hard to hear, harder to tell, but they matter because they reveal something about human nature that most of us would rather not face. That even the people we're supposed to trust the most can become monsters. Each of these cases, the cold mother, the guilty father, the manipulative couple, shows a different side of evil. Some hide it behind a calm face, others drown in regret, and some try to escape it by blaming anyone but themselves. But at the center of every story is a child who never got to grow up. A child who trusted, who depended, who loved, and who paid the ultimate price. We watched the trials, we listened to the evidence, we saw the reactions as the sentences were read aloud: life in prison, without parole. For many, that felt like justice, a way to close the chapter, a way to say they got what they deserved. But here's the question we all have to ask: is that enough? Can a prison sentence ever truly equal the life of a child? Can justice really be served when the person who committed the crime was the one who was supposed to protect the victim? And what about the pain left behind? The families, the grandparents, the teachers, the friends, they live with the loss forever, a hole that no court ruling can ever fill. There are moments in every one of these cases that stick with you. Not just the crime itself, but the silences, the empty stares, the sudden outbursts, the emotionless confessions. It's in those moments that we realize the justice system can punish. It can lock someone away, but it can't undo what's been done. And maybe that's what makes these stories so haunting. They remind us that some damage can't be repaired. Some wounds never heal. Still, we tell these stories for a reason: to remember the victims, to honor the truth, to make sure these children are never forgotten, and to ask ourselves, as a society, as individuals, how we failed them. Because these weren't random tragedies. These were preventable. The signs were there, the cries for help, the missed opportunities. If even one child can be saved because someone spoke up, paid attention, or took action, then these stories weren't told in vain. As we close this episode, we leave you with the words of Judge Carolyn Ellis during the sentencing of Amanda Reynolds and Chris Vaughn, the manipulative couple who blamed each other after killing their daughter. You sit here today, not as grieving parents, but as convicted murderers. The law can take your freedom, but it cannot make you feel. And that's the real tragedy. Not just that Lily is gone, but that neither of you truly seems to understand what you've done. And so we ask you, the audience, what is justice? Is it a sentence, a punishment, or something deeper, something that can only be measured in the lives we protect moving forward? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Was justice served, or was it too late? Because for the children in these stories, justice didn't come in time.